DC Public Charter School Board presents UnCHARTERed Territory with your host, Dr. Michelle Walker Davis.
30 years ago, DC became one of the first cities in the country to open public charter schools. No one knew exactly what that meant yet. No one had a map. What we had was a belief that students in this city deserved more options, more innovation, and more accountability. And so people built something new. Schools that looked different, schools that served students differently, schools that were willing to be held to a standard they set for themselves. Over 30 years, the people who built those schools taught all of us something about what leadership in education actually requires. Not leadership as a title, leadership as a practice. Today, I'm sitting down with two accomplished leaders in the DC charter sector, women who have been doing that work for decades and who have something important to say about what it takes and how the challenges they faced prepared them for today. This is UnCHARTERed Territory. I am Dr. Michelle Walker Davis. Let's get into it. Let me introduce you to our guest, Pat Brantley, CEO of Friendship Public Charter Schools, and Allison Kokkoros, CEO of Carlos Rosario Public Charter School. Thank you so much for being here. So, let's get into some questions. You both have led organizations that have been at the forefront of our charter movement at the early stages. Talk to me a little bit about what it's meant to lead for decades, lead the institutions that you both are leading.
Great question. Our school, we just celebrated actually more than 50 years of being in existence, and 30 years of those, of course, as a charter school, or almost 30 years. And it's been a journey, it's been a challenge, and an amazing opportunity for our community. I literally remember the day we submitted our charter application, and I can tell you the date. It was September 15th, 1997.
Wow.
And back then you needed to bring in your applications in binders, 15 copies. The binders were this big, carrying in those binders to the Public Charter School Board office.
Wow.
And I remember that Sonia Gutierrez, the head of the school, blessed the binders before we carried them
Yeah.
because it had been a labor of love and community poured into that application, and all of our dreams were there. And I literally remember the hearing in front of the Public Charter School Board and former students of our school, because we were reestablishing our school,
Yeah.
or hoping to reestablish our school, former students coming and testifying with tears in their eyes saying, please provide the Carlos Rosario School a charter contract to operate because it has transformed lives. So from those early days of not even being sure if we would be able to have that charter contract, to getting our charter contract, opening up our doors, to, flash forward today, 2 campuses,
Yeah.
2,000 students from all around the world, our school recognized as a national model for adult education and career and technical education. It's been such a journey. And I tell you, in those early days, it was like literally building the plane in mid-flight, learning how to be a charter school.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate the opportunity to go through memory lane with you today.
Well, I'll ask you a little bit about what you've learned in that journey, but Pat, why don't you share your story?
First, thanks for having us. It is wonderful to be able to share, but also to hear. And when you said 50 years, we often think that our story starts when we got the charter.
Right.
But for many of us very early organizations, it started way before that. And at Friendship House, it was nearly 100-year-old social services agency when we decided we could do more for children and families if we could take advantage of the School Reform Act and start schools. And so I remember the binders, I remember going in person, I remember people putting those together and going down. And when I think about those early days, it is apt that you would name this uncharted territory because it was
Yes.
uncharted. And whether you had your 50 years of history or 100 years of history, no one knew exactly what we were getting into. We knew that our children needed something different. We knew that the systems had to change. We knew that we could deliver schools. But first, we had to deliver belief.
Yeah.
And so when I think about leadership then, it wasn't about, operating the school or the campus or the et cetera. It was about having the courage to be able to make a change and establish something new. There was no roadmap. There was no playbook. We didn't know if funding was going to be steady. We didn't know if children were going to show up. And our founder tells a story that on the first day of school, we didn't have our certificates of occupancy. They were delayed in getting them to us.
Yeah.
And we had these buses in front of the school. So when the kids got there, if we didn't get that certificate, we could take them someplace. But there was a moment before any child arrived and it was like, maybe no one is coming. And then 1,200 showed up.
Wow.
And their certificate
Wow.
came in hand like 5 minutes before we had to open the doors. And ultimately, what I would say about leadership and something that we learned was that it's belief that comes before anything else. And I think we were able to build it among our families.
I'm going to ask you later about what you've seen over the time that you all have been in your organization. But I want to go first to, you both have succeeded founders. You were a part of the organization very early at its inception. You were part of the team, but now you are the head of this organization. And I want to connect it to what Pat said about you are the keeper of that dream and that belief. Maybe it's shifted a little over time. Maybe you've learned things, but you are now the legacy builders and the legacy holders. Talk to me about what that looks like and feels like to succeed a founder, hold on to what's true about the organization, but also make it your own. Say a little bit about that.
You know.
Okay. It is going back to the word courage, following a visionary, impactful founder is not for the faint of heart. It's true. And it requires incredible dedication to the mission, courage, and a vision for where the organization can go, realizing that what you're doing is building on a foundation that was built incredibly strongly by somebody ahead of you. And that was my experience with my predecessor, Sonia Gutierrez, the original founder of our school, who was principal when I was a teacher before we became a charter school, and then the CEO of our charter school. And when she was ready to transition, that handover for our whole school community was something that was significant and momentous and required me and my team to look at what do we have and where are we going, and deciding what we let go of from what we've done before and what we are going to adopt that is new, and realizing that there will be some people in the community who want it to stay the same.
Exactly, yeah.
That's normal, that's natural. And other people who are anxious and chomping for it to evolve and change very rapidly. And so following a founder requires a tremendous amount of discernment, listening. I was talking to someone who's stepping in to follow a founder soon in the nonprofit community here in DC, and this is what I was sharing with her. Courage, discernment. Realize that you will have people who want you to go very slow and not change much, and then you will also be on the receiving end of people who want you to change a lot very quickly.
Yeah.
And it is up to you to ground yourself in the needs of the community, the opportunities, to be able to set that vision for where to go. And then also, honestly, to build a board and allies and partners inside and outside of the organization for where you're going. And that's what we've done.
Yeah.
It's a terrific story. I met your founder many times, and the presence the power, you could just see when you walk the room. And I think that's true of many of our founders. I would say when Donald Hentz showed up in a room, you knew he was there.
Absolutely.
And he was not shy about using his voice and telling you what was right for children and what needed to happen next. And one of the things that I think is what a gift it was to have a founder like that. Donald's vision was so big that it went beyond what one man could do across his time at the helm. And so stepping in didn't mean coming with a new vision. It meant being true to this idea that was going to last across generations. Our children deserve more. We have to put our minds, hearts, and hands to the work and get it done, and every day be better. But some of the things that I say about Donald, the one thing that I say, Donald believed in every child who came through our doors before he ever met them. And Donald believed in every staff person that same way. And so when I think about what I carry forward, it isn't how we do, I don't know, finance or operations or anything. It is how we look at the children who walk through our doors and the staff that are doing the work with a belief in their potential and possibility and understanding that when they thrive, it's because we provided the right supports. And when they don't, that is still on us. And so to me, what Donald gave me, because he had such big beliefs and this big vision, was that I could do the CEO in my own way. Now, I might not be at the table like, listen, today, this is what you need to do. But I learned a lot about power and authority. And you can have courage because you are standing up for someone else. And that is something to be proud of and something to always push forward, to remember that the most vulnerable members of community, our community, the children, that's who we stand for. And so ultimately, vision, belief, and courage define Donald, and that's what we brought forward. At least that's what I hope people see that I have brought forward at Friendship.
We absolutely see that.
Yes.
I can say that.
I mean, and I appreciate you sharing just the force that your founders were and what they represented, not just for your school communities, but what I would say for the charter movement. I would take the privilege to say you both are forces in your own right in our charter sector today. And I want to ask, what have you seen in terms of how has the charter sector changed from day one with the binders as you're walking in to PCSB to today? Children still need to learn. In your case, Allison, adults still need to learn and still need to have opportunities, but our landscape has shifted significantly. So talk to me about that. But I also want to ask you and acknowledge that your work has also changed the sector. So I want to lift up, how has your leadership, how has the leadership of other leaders changed the sector such that we get to sit here almost 30 years to the date of opening our first school?
30 years of contribution, 30 years of standing up for children, 30 years of doing our best to deliver schools that honor the potential of our children and their families. You know, when I think about the 30 years, in the beginning, the courage and the work and our absolute belief was our children need something more. We're going to get together and deliver it, and we are going to disrupt systems that do not seem to believe in our children. If they do, they're not delivering. 30 years later, if we are honest, it is not about the disruption of the external. It is about looking inward and realizing we are now part of the system. And so what has to change is not just the conditions outside, but we've got to deliver schools not based on yesterday, but what our children need next. And that's a different thing altogether. It's a different thing to say, 47% of the seats of the schools that are operating in the district, that's charter. That means you are the system.
We're a system in our own right.
That's right. That's right. So now when we want improvement, we're not looking to like what's not happening over there. We have to look at ourselves and say, what are we what do we need to do? How do we go deeper? How do we build better? And how do we ensure that wasn't from the beginning just building schools, but build systems that deliver and that can last?
Yeah.
Yeah. Building off of that, thinking about systems, over the course of 30 years, from not having any charter schools to then having a handful of charter schools and a new public charter school authority, and everyone learning how to be. The charter authority learning how to govern and the systems and processes to put in place and how to hold schools accountable. The schools building out. I'm thinking about our own school. We did not have a learning and evaluation division. Now we do.
Yes.
We did not have a registration team. Now we do. And so in those early days, that's why I was saying it's building the plane while in mid-flight. We were assessing what we needed, what was required of us, and designing while we were going. So there's a lot of churn and movement and design and building while operating and delivering at our micro level as a school, at the system level amongst our peer schools and with the Public Charter School Board. And then beyond that, within the District of Columbia, that was kind of getting used to having charter schools and having us in the ecosystem. So looking at those early days and the excitement of it and how daunting it was, and really it's like we were startups.
Yeah.
We were all startups and figuring it out and taking a big bet on our schools, knowing that it was crucial for the communities that we serve because they weren't receiving the services they needed in terms of education. Looking at where we are today. And it's fascinating to see the maturity of the sector.
Yeah.
The evolution, again, at the micro level within schools that have existed for multiple decades, that we have identified the structure that we need as an organization. We have grown into 2 campuses. We have roles that we identified we needed in order to best fulfill the promise of what we can do to deliver services, quality, and this loving and respectful environment for our students that helps them thrive. Then we look at the Public Charter School Board and the evolution of the accountability systems that I vividly remember over the years. And today to Aspire, that has evolved, and the evolution of how you communicate with us on what's coming down the pike. It's fascinating to see how much more sophisticated I feel we are at every level of the system. I would include that relates to our interfacing with DC government.
Yes. Yeah.
We as a school because we're an adult serving school, we knew we needed to be out there in front, making sure it was self-evident, the need and the impact of quality adult education for the community we serve. Now we're working as a coalition of adult serving schools, coordinating on our key agenda items.
And doing so well, I might add.
Thank you. It's thrilling that we have matured and arrived at this place. We just recently had Adult Charter Schools Day at the City Council.
Yeah.
And multiple City Council members made time to come and sit with our learners and with our teachers. And we were very clear in what we were asking for. Transportation subsidies for adults are crucial. If they're not there, they will not be able to persist in their learning. Continued investment in and bringing the adult ed funding weight to the level that was recommended by the adequacy study. We were all singing from the same sheet of music, and we saw the responsiveness and the affirmation of that. So it's a joy and there are challenges.
Well, I'm as you were both talking about how the sector has changed and how your individual school communities have changed, I was thinking about what you shared earlier, Allison, about coming after a visionary, coming after a founder, and people having asks about what needs to stay the same and what needs to change.
Sure.
We are a system now. We are more sophisticated. The system is more complex. In some ways, some might argue, let's not change anything because we've arrived. In other ways, people are now maybe asking questions that they didn't ask before when we were the startup. And so I think pressures are coming from both places. When you think about what needs to stay the same and what needs to change about our sector, what comes to mind? And I think, Pat, you started going down this road, naming that we need to look inward. We need to think differently about our work. But what should we be thinking about for the next 30 years?
For the next 30 years, I think that when we started, we went in bright-eyed with big goals, really big goals. We were going to close the achievement gap. We were going to send 100% of our children to college or successful careers. There were just so many things, and they were really high goals. And like anything, you go 30 years and you realize what you didn't know, or what's that saying? Everybody has a plan till they get, popped in the face or whatever it might be. And so what I see is that we need to reestablish big vision and big goals. And then we need to work to make it happen. Now, like anyone, I am proud that this city is the fastest improving of urban districts, that we have seen a return to pre-pandemic levels, at least in English language arts, and math seems to be growing pretty fast. But it's simply not enough. And when we celebrate that some segments of our community, some groups of children, they've doubled their proficiency, et cetera, you've got to ask yourself, is that just a talking point, or are we actually okay that doubling meant you went from 15 to 30?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
And so to me, the time is now to really examine where we are, given the resources that we have. May not be everything that we need, but it's, we're steps in the right direction. Where we have knowledge, science of reading, what works, career and technical education, and where we have a breadth of opportunities, adult schools, language immersion, traditional college serving schools, small community schools for people that want that for their children. There is enough strength in our sector that if we say we're going to close the achievement gap, we can actually get there. And so I think that we need it. What else do I think that we have as a resource? Now, even as I say this, people are going to be like, Pat, are you actually saying that? It is a resource to have standards and structure and transparency and a report card that lets us know. One that aims high but judges fairly. And I think that when I think about authorization, one of the most important things is to say to us, and you do, this is what you promised. This is how we're going to measure it. And this is how we're going to make it transparent to people, whether or not you are delivering. That to me is a gift. Because I've seen this sector, or this, the schools that we deliver over time, because we experienced the pandemic. I can tell you that we all did important work during the pandemic and post the pandemic. But fairly, you all didn't say, we still have a report card during that period. But there was the time when we were coming out, like those next few years, 22, 23, that it felt like, where then is our North Star? And I think, thankfully, you slowed Aspire, but it's here now. But you did let us know privately, not publicly, here's where you stand. And to me, that's what set the fire back of, okay, we all weathered the storm. Now what? And so I think a mature sector embraces accountability, because we know it's not just saying we made these incremental gains. It is saying we still have big goals. We've got big gaps to fill, and we can actually do it.
Anything to add there, Allison?
That's hard to add too. Mic drop. I would say what to keep the same, double click on the fair accountability. That's the calling card of charter schools. And delivering on the promise and on outcomes and impact for the communities that are furthest from opportunity, who deserve quality education and access to opportunity. So keeping that laser beam focus on the outcomes and the impact, while also cultivating an environment of innovation and nimbleness and responsiveness to community need, to the labor market needs and how they're evolving, to technology as it evolves with AI and all that's changing.
Yes.
That is part of the promise of charter schools, is that we are entrepreneurial, we are nimble, we can turn on a dime, and that needs to stay the same.
Yeah.
Now more than ever, as our world and economy is so rapidly changing. What I think we could do even more of or do better of is I think of as school leaders, we're in our schools and it can be overwhelming. The compliance, the new layers of compliance that come every year put by the city council,
Put by us.
But yes, put by as you're doing your job. But yes, we receive that and need to respond to it. Maybe don't always have the additional staff or capacity. And so that can be incredibly consuming, along with running the day-to-day of a school and supporting our teachers and our teams and pouring into the climate and the culture of the organization, connecting with our students. That in itself is all consuming and also incredibly rewarding work. And I say all of that to say the challenge often for school leaders is the connections outside of our school. Realizing how crucial, how important it is that we make known what's happening inside our schools, that we make it visible in a variety of ways. And that is crucial for us as leaders to work with our teams, to equip our teachers and our students and our parents to recognize the benefit and the impact and to be prepared and equipped to share about it, to share about it with their friends, with their neighbors, with somebody that they meet who says, charter schools, I've heard X, Y, and Z about charter schools, and for them to be ready to say, well, I don't know what you've heard, but I know what I'm experiencing at my school, and you know what's changing my life. Or as a teacher, I'm seeing that it's changing lives. That we need to see more of as a sector, because there's so much that's happening that is beautiful and it's not as visible yet as it needs to be.
You remind me that 30 years ago, we said we are not going to let people overlook the children and adults that need our services. And today, we can't be so head down. I get it. The work is hard, the compliance, the running the schools, et cetera, that we let people today overlook and ignore the children and adults that we serve.
I think that you ladies absolutely, and many of our charter leaders do a fantastic job of holding city folks accountable to not ignore the 47% of our students who attend public charter schools. I would agree with you that we have a great story to tell. Absolutely, we have challenges and opportunities ahead of us, but we have a great story to tell. And I would say we have that story to tell here in DC, but nationally. We are, as I mentioned at the beginning, one of the first. And just as we are celebrating the rapid increases that we've seen over years, often that conversation is speaking about only one part of our educational system. And I think we have a lot to say about how charters have contributed to that increase across the city, and a lot for our colleagues in other jurisdictions to learn from us. I know both of you share your experiences nationally, but if you were to speak to your national counterparts, what would you tell them that they absolutely need to learn from DC as they think about the next 30 years in the charter movement across the country? What do we get right, and what should they borrow from DC?
DC is a true picture of what happens when you go from possibility to reality. And anywhere you are in this country, most people imagine a greater future or possibility for their children. The question is, are you willing to get in and make the changes necessary, make the politicians listen to you, organize your families, and say, today we're going to do something different. And so I mentioned that when we started, we were like, is anyone going to show up? Then 1,200 students did, and that was just 2 campuses that opened. Today we are 15 campuses, thousands of students. And so ultimately, whether you are starting with 0 charter schools or just a handful, there are children in your community who need you. And what you learn from us is, how do you bring the people, the resources, the politics, the accountability, and yes, even the compliance together to deliver quality schools?
Yes. I think about good design. I think we've got a good design here in DC with the Public Charter School Board as our charter authority. And, we had different chapters in the design of that here in DC with the Board of Ed at one point. And so we have a dedicated charter authorizer. We have a very strong charter alliance that Pat and I are on the board of, and is providing incredible support, encouragement, convening charter schools together to learn from one another, for mutual support. And we have become more and more known and respected within Washington, D.C. I see that.
Yeah.
I see in how city council members respond to us. They recognize more than they do at the beginning how important of a constituency we are. So I would say to other charter schools and other jurisdictions, make sure you have strong coalitions. Make sure you've got a strong alliance or association. I'd also say, beyond that, partnerships with employers and with other sector partners is essential for good design. And so I think about our school, and we're serving 2,000 students today with 2 campuses, and a good bulk of that is with career technical education. And our career training programs are highly effective, high rates of persistence through the training programs, and then very high certification test passing rates in the hospitality field, and nurse aid training, in bilingual paraeducator training to break into the teaching workforce, in IT training. And that would be well and good, but may not work at all if we didn't have connections to employers. But we do.
Yeah.
And that's good design. We have employer advisory committees from day one when we opened each one of those programs. And they help us keep our finger on the pulse of their industry, the IT industry, the healthcare industry. And our curriculum and our program design has evolved and adapted over the years to make sure that our learners are getting the skills and the confidence they need in what's being demanded right now in that field, so that as soon as they get the credential, they are hired.
Yeah.
And not just hired, but then teed up for growth.
Yeah.
Into real leadership positions. So design thinking, working backwards from what the sector is calling for. Not maybe what is shiny and exciting at the moment, but really what is going to result in that end goal of your learners graduating and making it.
Well, Pat, Allison, thank you so much for being my inaugural guest for Uncharted Territory. Thank you so much for what you have done, for being pioneers in this movement and being here still today in leadership of this movement. I appreciate you being here, but more importantly, I appreciate the contributions you've made to the DC education landscape. I am blessed to be part of working with you and with the leaders in our community, and just excited for what the next 30 years will bring for DC charter schools.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.